Welcome to Backboard Banter on the board with your hosts, Matt Middleton and Kevin Rayner, where the banter's as ferocious as that Giannis 50 plus point on 70% shooting game, second of his career, second in a week with him and Damian Lillard. I know Damian got the 60, but man, these guys are too good.
Giannis is wild. He is a beast in this league. Underrated in the MVP race. Many people are saying that his stats are, letting him down this year. But again, this is also the conversation of statistics are a problem, blah, blah, blah. Either way, Giannis, absolute beast. Definitely a top 3 player in the NBA at worst, for sure.
Bro's top two at worst. like you you could maybe make the argument for Luka and for Jokic, but like if you're gonna make the argument for one, you can't make it for the other over
Uh,
him.
Absolutely.
Personal opinion.
Impressive for him. The Bucks still hanging out there, second seed in the East, doing what they can. Giannis just gonna sneak his way into another hopefully good playoff run. But Matt, let's talk about picks. Because on the one side of this podcast over here, we've got the legend himself pulling it off. And on the other side here, we've
Hey,
got another guy just falling flat over and over again.
man, it's because I didn't do football this year on the podcast. That's the reason for it. And they were just waiting for me to come in with those god tier picks. 11-1, man, only done in by my Minnesota Vikings. I should have picked the Giants, man.
And you know what? And that one right there is also a pick from the heart because you know that Vikings fan inside of you really wanted it. So we can't really blame you. You're human, okay? We're allowed to have a little bit of error here and there. You talk about the Raptors. They're not going to turn around. They're not going to make it a trade. Well, they definitely haven't turned it around. That's for sure. Not a great week. And there's so many rumors about trades happening that we got to believe something's going to happen. But we'll get to that later, Matt. Myself. I was looking at that 49ers game thinking, Purdy's the backup QB. He'll be fine. Nope. He goes down, so they got to pull the next guy. And what do you know? He gets hurt, so Purdy's got to limp back. Like 49ers, man. You and QB's not going well this season.
Dude, it is comically bad for them. Like, unfortunately, like they go in with their third string quarterback who's been really good this year, right? Like Brock
Yeah.
Purdy was undefeated up until this game. He'd been playing pretty well. And then he tears his UCL in the first, 5 minutes of the game or whatever.
Oof.
Then Josh Johnson, who has played on more NFL teams than games started in his
Wow.
NFL career, which was actually a joke that I made to Mitchell, Mitchell, my brother-in-law,
Yeah.
on the couch. We were watching the game. He came over, and I was like, totally has played fewer games than teams. And it comes out that that's true. Yeah, I mean, the 49ers actually kept it pretty close considering they didn't have a quarterback. Like, if a guy gets knocked out of the game and then has to come back into the game later because the other guy got knocked out, who was your fourth string quarterback, and
Yeah.
now he can't even throw. Like they're lining up Christian McCaffrey in the Wildcat situation. Like it was not pretty for them, and like it was bound to happen for the Eagles. Now the Eagles do look very good, and I'm worried about the Chiefs here, man. I'm thinking that the Eagles might be able to pull this off, but I'll make my prediction next week.
Yeah, we'll get into it later. It's an interesting Super Bowl for sure. Mahomes, I'm sorry, what, third Super Bowl in 4 years? Am I correct in saying that, Matt? Like,
Yeah,
just
he's
another notch in his belt, basically.
dude. He's never not hosted the AFC Championship game when he's the starter. Like what? That means he's always been a Final Four team, and he's always been the quote unquote favorite to win. That game before the Super Bowl, and it's it's spectacular what he's doing, man. The league runs through him at this point, and it's not even close.
I
Like
mean,
it's Mahomes as Tiger Woods, and everybody else is the field.
and
So
it's appropriate too, considering that Tom Brady did retire. He came out, he said he's retired. We probably believe him this time. He's done what he's wanted to. We'll see the story now.
he released a video where he was actually emotional about it, as opposed to like a tweet, as
Yeah.
opposed to like this message on Instagram or Twitter. Like he actually showed his face saying it, and you could see that there was definitely some sadness to it. So I don't think he would have been that sad if he was planning on changing his mind. And his stated goal was always 45, and he played until he was 45. It might have been the worst, win-loss record of his career, but hey, he was 45, man. The only time this man has ever had a losing season is at the age of 45. Like, only so much you can do.
I mean, hey, Jordan still gets considered the GOAT, even though he wasn't that great when he came back in his later seasons. But I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get Matt too riled up when we start talking about basketball. So I want to say let's talk about more positive things, but I think it's negative season because we gotta go into this Raptors chat time. We gotta talk about this squad. A 1-3 week. OG gets hurt in the first game of the week, and we're on this road trip without him. And now he's going to sit out this whole road trip, and we all know it's because, he's not as injured as people think. It's mostly just because of the trade block. But, man, not a fun week for Raptors fans all around.
Dude, it's been a tough week. I mean, coming in after that Kings game, we were both kind of, a little bit higher on them, and we've been going back and forth on whether they can pull it around. And, we both agree that there's way too much talent on this roster to be kind of where we are. And then, again, it was a disappointing game against Golden State, but not one that was super surprising. They had a good bounce back win against Portland, but then the two losses against Phoenix and Utah, they're just gut wrenching, man. Like Phoenix without Devin Booker, Utah, who is literally trying to tank for Victor Wembanyama, but is doing a better job at winning than us, who's trying to make the playoffs and trying to take a step from their 5th seed last year. And like, it's pathetic, man. Like, it's just, I don't know. What do you want to say about it?
I mean, it's just super disappointing, to look at these games themselves, right? Like, so many offensive boards, so many second chance points for this team, so many statistical wins in categories in these games, but we lose in the long run. Moments where the boys are just lacking, the right rotation isn't there, and it hurts. Like I was looking at that Blazers win, and I was like, okay, OG, maybe not the end of the world. We can survive without OG. But also that I remember that it's the Blazers, and if you hold Damian Lillard down, which he had 30 points, 10 of 20 shooting. We held him down, but it's the Blazers, so it's whatever. But then I thought about the next 2 games, and I'm like, they're relatively close. The Suns really only pulled away at the end of the game, and that Jazz game, right at the end, we lost it. Like, do we win those games with OG, right? Is that the conversation that the front office is having right now? Like, as much as it sucks that OG is injured and we don't have him to prove whether we can win or not in this road trip, it almost alleviates that question of, well, we're losing without him, so is that the direction we want to go?
It doesn't matter, man. Even with OG, like we've been losing these type of games all year where we've been in the games, we've been close, and then for as great of a first month as we had in the fourth quarter, we've had the rest of the season as a nightmare in the fourth quarter, man. Like we can't hit buckets when it matters. We can't run our sets when it matters. We can't clamp down on defense when it matters. It just doesn't look like anybody on this team really wants to work together.
Yeah.
Whether it's they don't believe in the system, they don't believe that their players are going to be able to read it right, and if they make a move, the guy who's supposed to be covering them isn't going to rotate, and it's going to be an easy basket. Like I don't know what it is, but they just don't look like a cohesive unit, and that's their biggest issue to me. It's not a talent level because Utah looked like the more talented team than us last night, but we all know that if you were to take our rosters side by side, especially at the beginning of the year, nobody was taking Utah's roster over Toronto.
No.
Nobody, right? Pascal Siakam, supposed to be a top 15 player in this league. They have Lauri Markkanen, who people probably had in the 60 range, at the start of the year. And yes, he's proven to be better than that. But come on, man. Like, how are we getting beat by Utah out here when we shot 27 extra attempts?
And, it also comes down to the classic conversation that we've had all year. There's 2 real struggles that the Raptors have had, and whether that is, a product of the 6-9 conversation or it's just something that we need to figure out. It's we have guard problems and we have big problems. And when a guy like Walker Kessler, who I will feel slightly responsible, I did pick him up in fantasy last night, knowing he'd have a good game against the Raptors, but come on, man. I was expecting, 14, 15 blocks? Sorry, 14, 15 rebounds, 7 blocks or so from the guy. Like, we are getting abused by subpar centers in the league. And we can have as many 6'9" guys as we want, but that has to be, looked at and adjusted in the future.
Look, man, I don't know if I'd call Walker Kessler a subpar center at the moment, just because he is the you know, second-rated defender in the entire NBA when it comes to inside presence.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's behind. Who's he behind? It doesn't matter who he's behind, but he's up there. I think it's Jaren Jackson Jr. who's number one. So good company to keep.
Yep.
He's ahead of Rudy Gobert. Like he's really the guy that we should have hoped for at center in our draft pick. And if he went at 22, and if we had kept 20 and not had traded for Thad Young, we possibly could have gotten this man. It's like the Desmond Bane thing all over again. So to me, like there's a lot of chatter, like you said, about the 6'9" experiment and is it proving that it doesn't work? I think that the 6'9" experiment does kind of work, but we need stronger pieces that are not 6'9", and we also need a coach who better utilizes our players and doesn't run them into the ground for every single game that we possibly could potentially win, because we're not winning enough to justify playing 3 guys 36 minutes a night. We're not.
And when it comes to the rotations as well, right? You talk about the 6'9" experimenting working. Like, I think if you're gonna have your stars being 6'9", you're looking at the LeBron James style. You're looking at the Kawhi Leonard style, which is proven to work in the NBA. The problem is that it's such a guards league. It's such a movement-based league right now. And if we don't have the right pieces, on that part of our court, we're in trouble. And yes, guys like Siakam and OG can hold their own against the majority of centers in the league. But that's why I started with the center conversation, because, we can talk about the centers easily, but it really is the guard situation. It's why Gary might be getting traded. It's why the Fred trade conversations are so high right now. It's because you look at teams around the NBA that are having success, right? They have superstar guards. They have star level guards that can really run the show. And I love Fred. We love Fred for what he's done right now, but we've always liked him off ball, liked him not having to be the main presence. Like, he was a stunner against the Bucks in that championship team because nobody was expecting him. But he was just this little guy running off ball, doing the crazy things that he did, right? So right? Like, that's the thing. Like, it might be time for a change simply because the league may not work for the pieces around our 6'9" experiment.
And look, man, I think Fred and Gary are both good guards. Excuse me. I think they're both really good guards. I think that they've got a lot to offer. And Fred is an all-star level guard. Like he proved it last year.
Oh, yeah.
Even over the last month, he's played out of his mind. Good. Like
he had a triple-double against Utah last night.
Yeah, his second career ever triple-double, both against Utah. Funny fact.
Mm-hmm.
But he's actually been, that Fred VanVleet that we expect. But it goes to our lack of depth in that position as to why these guys kind of peter out, right? Like when Malachi Flynn and Delano Banton are your 2 backups and your coach doesn't play your 2 backups, that's where it falls off a cliff. Like, that's why I think, like, subbing out a piece like OG Anunoby, who Precious is making it a lot more realistic of an option to sub out OG because he can develop into that OG role. He's a little bit bigger than OG. He's a little bit more athletic than OG. He's just as quick with his feet. He can stay in front of guys on the perimeter. He can develop into that. And getting a, guard plus a bunch of picks, like a Devontae Graham out of New Orleans and a bunch of picks, a Terry Rozier out of Charlotte and some picks, If you could get Darius Garland from Cleveland, I don't think they'd give him up, but something along the lines. It doesn't need to be a Darius Garland level player. Like I mentioned, Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier level players would do just fine as long as the other assets equaled OG's value. Like that's fine with me because it would alleviate Freddie from playing 37, 38 minutes a night. Maybe he only plays 31 a night. And in those 31, he's giving you the all-star Fred VanVleet level play night in, night out. He's not, one night he's great, one night he's bad. One night he's great, one night he's bad. The next night he's maybe mediocre. Like, that pattern, like we need to get out of it for him.
You can also add to that with the idea of how many times do you think a bad shooting night can be attributed to Fred coming off the bench, realizing our bench unit wasn't able to hold up. We're now down, and he's got to make some hero ball plays in his mind because it's his team, right? He may not be the guy because Siakam is the guy, quote unquote, but it's still Fred's team. That's kind of what we've always agreed on. So if you can get him a backup, right? Like we were even talking about the Knicks, right? Because the Knicks are the ones that are rumored to have given 3 first-round picks for OG. Like, you get a little something from that team as well, and you're in business. If they're willing to give up that, right? Like it looks like a guard situation needs help, and we talk about how we have all these options, in our 3 and our 4 spot. Well, it'd be nice to have a couple options in our 1 and 2 spot, right? Because that's kind of what Fred and Norm were able to be for a while with Kyle, right? Being able to let Kyle run the show and they could flex out depending on who was having the right game and the right matchups as well. And I think options would really help benefit Fred right now. And Delano and Flynn are not there. Whether that's their own fault or Nurse's fault is another question alone.
No, absolutely, man. And I think that like the lack of development on their part can be attributed some to Nick Nurse. Maybe their ceiling wasn't as high as Masai and Bobby thought at when they drafted them, but they did draft them over some pretty decent players, man. And I know Delano Banton was a later second round pick, but he's flashed. Like that 27-point game earlier this year, literally his first game as a Raptor when he hit that half-court shot, right? Like he's flashed some ability, and for him to have not taken any step at all, for him to be back in the G League after he dominated it last year, right? Like he dominated to the point where he should have been able to get consistent minutes with the Raptors.
He runs the G League. He runs our team in the G League. Like,
and he can't get consistent minutes up here. So I don't know, man. It feels like a Nick Nurse problem. And it also feels like a top of the roster isn't good enough problem. Our Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet combo as 1-2 isn't as highly rated as we anticipated it being. We probably anticipated them being a top 15 duo in the NBA. And right now they're looking like a bottom 5 duo,
This is also a slight problem that can maybe be attributed to the idea that, I mean, I don't want to say this, but like, this is a business. Basketball is a business. And like, are we talking winning or are we talking development, right? Like that's the side of the coin that I think teams that are in that midpoint are really trying to fight that line. And, the fact that there finally are some rumors about the fact that Nurse's job might actually be on the hot seat, he's only on contract through next season as well. So, if things don't go well and they actually do decide to sell the farm, like you could be looking at Nurse being gone, this summer and a true rebuild putting in place. And I'm on board with that if it is a developmental focus, right? Because you can have this winning mentality that we love from the Raptors to have, right? Like you can't just be a team that doesn't want to win, unless you're just like focusing on trying to get better, even though you're going to lose. That's the only opportunity and option at that point. So,
but even then, you want to be competitive.
Well, that's the thing. Like everyone's favorite tanks, OKC fans for the past few years have loved to lose games by 2, have loved to lose games by 1 because it means that they had a good game. Their boys showed up and played, but they're getting another good player hopefully come the end of the season, right? So there's
Yeah.
there's these fine lines that you have to fight in the NBA, and the Raptors, I think, have been losing a lot of battles in the directions that they've decided to make in the past year or two.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the exact issue, right? Like after Tampa, we were supposed to be bad. We end up being, pretty good.
Yeah.
In the second half of the last year, we were probably a top 5 NBA team, what it looked like. And then, so this year, we're making the decision that, we have to be good because of the progress that we made last year.
Yeah.
And so Nick is super hyper focused on winning every single game that he can. And unfortunately, he's just, not pulling the right strings. Our
Yeah.
guys are collapsing at the wrong times, and we're not getting enough out of this group. And the fact that, again, like you said, we were 48 and 34 last year, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
we already have 30 losses this year in 52 games, 54 games, something like that. I, it's it's just sad, man. Like it's just I don't know what happened. Like, did the messaging change? Has he not adapted to the league playing us differently? Like, there's so many things that I feel like it's a coaching issue because, again, like, take our roster and compare it to every single team in the play in. You would say that we have at least, in Siakam, the best player. Maybe you could say Trey Young,
Yeah.
out of that group there. Maybe Bradley Beal. But I think Pascal Siakam over Bradley Beal in recent years, right? And then you take Fred VanVleet and like who's their second star? Maybe again Atlanta and Murray. But after Murray, it's a pretty stark drop off for Atlanta. Whereas we still have OG, we still have Precious, we still
Yep.
have Gary, and I haven't even gotten to Scotty. Like we should be good,
Yeah.
and that is I think the most frustrating part for fans for us watching this team is just the lack of cohesivity and the lack of ability to get it done. It just looks like they're fighting each other and the ball on every possession.
There's definitely more going on in that locker room than we as fans have been allowed to see, have gotten the opportunity to see, which I like. I like that, there's not a lot breaking out of our franchise. Like, we've never been a leaky team, if that's the right if there were the right
Yeah,
words to use there. So it'll be interesting to see where this next week goes because everyone's just waiting on the Raptors. Like, we've kind of agreed that, there's a lot of teams out there. There's, I think, 7 teams now that have at least been knowingly in the hunt for OG. So everyone's just waiting this next trade week to see what's gonna happen. That's for sure.
yeah, man. And I think a lot of teams are holding up on us because they're hoping that they can see what OG's worth. They can see what a Freddie's worth, a Gary Trent Jr.'s worth, and then, base their packages around similar offers. Because like you said, that Rudy Gobert trade, so an established, high level NBA player has really kind of, you know, changed the market for some teams and changed the way that they view trading. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think there's a ton of teams that really want OG Anunoby, and like I said, Precious makes it easier to swallow. Let's go get a bunch of assets for OG Anunoby and see if we can, fill out our roster. Because at the end of the day, man, like we're keeping an open roster spot for flexibility. Plus, we have Otto Porter Jr., who is Otto Porter Jr. He's worse than street clothes. He's worse than street clothes, man. Like he is. He's
He's a
basically
ghost at
tucked in
this
a
point.
bed, man. Like
Yeah.
hospital bed, man. Like I don't know. Ghost man is good too. Like it's it's not good, and so we're shortchanging ourselves with our roster as it is. Like we can't take flyers on guys like Jeff Doughton Jr. and then just banish him to the G
Yeah.
League and take a guy like Justin Champagnie who played well for us last year and then banish him and cut him from our team. Like we don't have enough talent in the guard spot and we don't have enough, ability to attract free agents to just give up on guys like
Yep.
that. And I think that's been severely lacking with our development program. You'd mentioned that the Pistons might be looking to fire Dwayne Casey. Honestly, I'd bring him back
I mean,
personally.
the conversation around Casey is, you look at guys like Sadiq Bey, rest in peace. I'm still sad about this. there's players on that team that are not taking the steps that people were expecting this year. And so, yeah, Dwayne Casey is slightly on the hot seat. And wouldn't it be poetic for Dwayne to come in, bring up the next core, and then let's make the trade, let's get a championship with the next coach? That would just be, who knows? That might happen. It would be fun. It would be kind of funny.
Oh man, it's so sad that we're at this point, and like the fact that we're just we're kind of in limbo, and if we don't make a change, man, I'm gonna be so sad. Like I would fire Sale at this point. I would go tank. I'd go get Scoot or Victor, pair him with Scotty, and at least you got a championship level duo potentially, at least based on draft position and at least based on pedigree. And I think that's something that's like really been hard for Raptors fans to admit about Fred VanVleet and Siakam, because they have looked so good at times, and they
Yeah.
have been, a lot of people consider Siakam the second best player on that championship team, even though we both know he wasn't. Fred VanVleet, was the only guy to steal Finals MVP votes away from Kawhi Leonard in that, championship. So those guys have those moments. But again, they were fourth, fifth, level of importance on our team. I would probably rank Marc Gasol in terms of importance over Pascal Siakam to that championship run. And so, like, they're just not those guys. They're not the guys that are going to take you year in, year out to the championship games. And if they're not going to, we've talked about it before, what's the worst thing in sports?
being mid,
Purgatory.
yeah, being purgatory. Yeah.
So like we did that with Kawhi or with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. We're doing it again with these two guys, and they're not Kyle or DeMar. Like they're not even close. Because at least with those guys, we were number 2 in the Eastern Conference, and we looked sick. Yes, we got blown out by LeBron, but at least we had good regular seasons, man.
Man, and there's so many teams that lost to Jordan, lost to Bird, lost to Magic, lost to the greats of the past. That's just the way that it is. And I do appreciate the Gasol comment. If you go back in time, you'll find Matt still being upset about that trade when it happened right at the beginning. Gotta bring. I was so pumped for that trade, and I was
I
disappointed.
know you were. Every time I see JV, man, I just think like he could be on our roster. Maybe we don't have a championship, and that sucks. He could still be on our roster, and we could actually have, NBA average center.
Oh my god, so true. Okay, so let's talk about the OG trade for a little bit. I think we've brought up most of the opportunities, but when it comes to like the Pelicans, the Grizzlies, like what are we really looking to get back here? Like obviously we want picks, but maybe picks aren't the best option. So what are these players on some of these teams that would really get us excited?
Well, man, like I was saying, Devonte Graham and a couple of those Laker first round picks. That Golden State first round pick from Memphis, and a guy like Desmond Bain. Like
Please,
I I know we probably can't get Desmond Bain, but I would take Desmond Bain for OG Anunoby.
man,
I might even do it straight up,
if
because we have a surplus of value of what OG brings. Yes, he's our best defender. Okay, but Precious can slide in there. Siakam can pick up a little bit extra slack. Scotty has been showing more defensive prowess lately. He's anticipating better. He's rotating better. He's directing traffic better. So we've got a ton of that, of 6'8", 6'9", long athletic guys. We talked about it at the beginning of the show, and we've talked about it for weeks. We need another guard. So if
shooting.
the Grizzlies are really desperate to get OG and they're willing to move Desmond for OG, I think that just fits our roster better. And that literally could be the kick that, really flips this whole roster and glues it together, right? Because it seems like we have a puzzle, and we're stacking too many pieces on the same pile. We need to spread out our pieces that fit together better.
Yeah, and we talk about how Donovan Mitchell could have been that shooter for our team. Desmond Bain can fill that role and maybe be a better defensive presence even. Although you have to admit, Mitchell's really stepped up his defensive game in Cleveland. But that's enough for the OG trade. Maybe the Suns get involved. I've heard rumors about that, and we move some things around. But
who are they gonna give us, man? Like
it's,
Mikal Bridges, like he is OG Anunoby.
I've heard Cam Johnson rumors, which I like Cam Johnson, but still no, thank you.
Yeah, like you'd have to give us a bunch of unprotected firsts along with Cam Johnson. I saw some Suns fan that was saying that the Raptors and Suns can't make a trade because OG Anunoby isn't that much better than Cam Johnson, and Pascal Siakam is only marginally better than DeAndre Ayton. And I was like, yo, talk about overvaluing your
Yeah.
guys. Like
And like
DeAndre Ayton is not even half of what Siakam is worth. Like,
and Aiden might be the trade because of the sign and trade rumors from the summer, but still, no, no. So we'll see what happens when this trade season continues. Next week we'll be talking about it. There might still be trade or two going on, but like I look at this week ahead that we have, with the Rockets on Friday, the Grizzlies on Sunday, and the Spurs on Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised if for example we lose to the Rockets and the Grizz on Sunday. Monday, Tuesday is the phone call days. You know what I mean? Where the trade potentially comes
fire
together, and
sale.
that Wednesday game we're missing a player or two. You know what I mean?
Hey man, if it's gonna go for Scoot Henderson, like that's exactly what I want. Because again, we need some kind of help out here, man. And the trade market like is really being held up by us. So I
It's
think there's
us.
gonna be an explosion after we start making trades. I think guys are gonna start getting moved. Actual values are gonna be more realistic, and a guy like Jay Crowder is actually gonna get to a new
Get out of
team.
there.
I think he looked great in Milwaukee. He's like kind of like a lesser version of OG,
Yeah.
but provides a lot of similar qualities. And Milwaukee's like missing a player like that.
He kind of does what PJ Tucker did for them. Would have been nice to have a guy like that. But yeah, the trade market is really just, wait for Toronto to do something. And then I wouldn't be surprised if, we see a bunch of like, smaller trades, guys for a couple of second rounders here or there.
Mm-hmm.
My prediction you'll hear later will probably be a similar type of situation come down the road. But do you want to talk about some of these win and loss streaks, like the Pelicans with 9 straight losses, for example? Like we knew it wasn't good with Zion going down, and obviously Ingram missed a bunch of these games, but 9 games in a row.
Dude, like I was so excited. They had finally proven to me that they were a good team. They were number 1, 2 in the West with the Grizzlies. I'm all excited. I'm all up on my high horse, thinking, yes, I knew the Pelicans were going to
What
be
the
good.
heck?
They were a year behind where I predicted them to be good, but Zion's finally going to be healthy. They load manage him.
Yeah.
I can't catch a break with this team. I think I'm officially off the Pelicans bandwagon, man. Like even as good as they are and as deep of a roster as they have, I just their stars are too injury prone. Like, the best abilities availability, and Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson lack that key factor in their game. And so really like their most consistent best players are CJ McCollum and Jonas Valanciunas. And like that's a decent squad. It's
Yeah.
not championship
Well,
caliber
it's why
squad.
the OG trade to the Pelicans is like kind of ironic because it's just adding another slightly injury prone player to that core. So yeah, it might work out for them, but yeah, man, Pels nine games. It's still when I read that, I still was like, there's no way because like the Spurs at 7 games is reasonable. We expect them to lose. They're gonna hover somewhere between 2 and 7 game losing streaks every time we talk about them. That's to be expected when you're going for the worst win loss in the NBA.
Dude, they're going for Wemby, like they got him in their sight, and like that makes sense. But no, man, like the fact that like the Pelicans are this bad is kind of ridiculous. The fact that the Wizards have won 6 straight, man, like where is this coming from? And the Wizards are literally the personification of being in purgatory. The teams for the last, I want to say, 20 plus years have never been a top 3 seed, but have never been like a bottom
Yeah.
2 seed. Like it's just so weird. I don't know, man. Like
Hey, shout out to Kyle Kuzma. He's been playing real great. That's the reason, probably mostly why they're on this crazy win streak. But when
Denny,
you're in the East and you're trying to get a positive record, like they're not even a 500 team and they're comfortably in the ninth seed. Not comfortably, but they're doing pretty good now.
well, dude, like we talked about it, like the third seed in the Western Conference has 21 losses, right? Like they're only 29 and 21. They're only 8 games above 500. that is so unlike the NBA. And
Yeah.
to bring it back to Washington, man, since the Rui trade, Denny Avija, he's been playing really, really well. He's gotten
Right.
more kind of runway, more leeway to actually play his game. He's looked really good in that position. But man,
Denny's
like
gonna be the next Bradley Beal of that team, like good but just kind of stuck and nothing happens. Like that's what I see.
maybe if he's lucky to get to Bradley
Yeah.
Beal levels, man. Like they're looking at like a competitive roster that gets bounced in the first round from a team that actually has a superstar, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we were last year. If you really think about it, we were a very competent team with a player who's not a true superstar, made it into the playoffs, got bounced by a team with a true superstar in Joel Embiid.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the truth. Can't deny that, man.
Sad, man. It's the truth. It hurts.
It
Hurts.
does.
I hate Philadelphia. Like for me to say that, like that hurts.
Bro, the
So
fact that Philly's doing as well as they are, and let's not talk about Philly. Let's talk about Milwaukee. Milwaukee's got 5 wins in a row. You know, we started with Giannis on this pod. We'll briefly touch on them again. Like they're doing good, but again, they're just another one of those teams that has got so much talent, knows how to play really well. Budenholzer has taken all of the criticism from this podcast over the past few years and has become a really, let's be honest, man, he's a good rotational coach that kind of does the right job with the right pieces.
bro, he's always been a decent rotational coach. He always has, the chess pieces that he wants to move, and he moves them. The issue with Budenholzer is in a playoff series when he makes his move and the guy counters,
Yeah.
he goes, I don't know what to do, and then
It's
he gets beat, and so like I still see it that way. I really do. I think if they had a better coach last year, they might have been able to beat Boston. Like I don't see Mike Budenholzer as a great coach, but again, you know, a coach can only do so much. They coach the players in front of them,
yeah.
and they should maximize talent. And I think that when they're not maximizing talent, that's when you have to really look to move on. And Budenholzer hasn't maximized his talent, but he hasn't depleted it.
He hasn't
Nick
let his
seems
talent
to
down.
be depleting our talent level. Okay, like we are
Uh,
having a tough time just getting average level performances out of our guys.
and speaking of average level guys doing unreal performances, not exactly the right transition, but I want to talk about Naz Reid now. You know, the T-Wolves have had a very, mediocre, yeah, A-tier transition right there.
No, perfect. You nailed it.
The T-Wolves have had a mediocre season, but last night against Golden State, you know, magic in a bottle happened. So role player Naz Reid put up 24 points, was it, I believe, here? The
Yep.
guy
Yeah.
went off. 24 points, 13 rebounds. Look, Golden State is the defending champions. Whether or not they are going to defend that is a conversation for another day. Naz Reid, backup center, may have just decided that, who is Karl Anthony Towns? Who is Rudy Gobert? This is my team now. The guy went off. Like they were down 15 or so points in the fourth. They brought into OT. He misses the 3-pointer to win the game, gets his own rebound, puts the putback dunk. Like, man, you gotta love when role players go off, man. It makes me happy at least.
Dude, it's really nice to see, and it's a case of a player just playing within their game and
Yeah.
letting the D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards, the stars, do their thing and provide that missing piece, that missing ingredient. And I think that what happens in the NBA a lot with guys like Cat and guys like Gobert is they want to be who they've always been, like the best player on a bad team, but they
Yeah.
want to be the best player, and it's not conducive to when you're actually trying to build team chemistry and championships. It's why the best teams are the teams that grow organically together, right? Like the Golden State of 2014, like the Memphis team that we're seeing right now.
Yep.
Growing organically, finding your, who's your number one player, or even Denver, man. Like
Yeah.
think about, what was it, 8 years ago when they had Nurkic and Jokic, and there was a real debate about who they're going
Give
to
or
keep
take.
and
Yeah.
who they're going to, build around. And they decided, obviously correctly, to keep Jokic. And that team grew organically through the draft and through development. and Jokic developed into a top 3 player in the NBA,
Man,
and they're riding high this year, man. Like they are
you've
looking scary out west.
you've got me thinking about a Jokic Damian Lillard pairing now and how unfair that could be for the league. But yeah, no. The Denver Nuggets, I'm a super happy, I'm a Nuggets fan. Matt knows I've been a big fan of this team for years basically, and to see them comfortably, like, cuz we can say that now, comfortably atop the West at
Oh
this
yeah,
point, pretty exciting for Denver fans, The window, I don't want to say the window is only open for so long for this team, but Michael Porter Jr. injury prone. How long can Aaron Gordon be this guy that he is beside him? Well, like Murray's relatively young. Jokic is an anomaly. So like how long is this window open for them? So this could be the year for Denver to really make a statement for Jokic.
yeah. Hopefully, man. I'm hoping that he can validate those 2 MVPs,
Yeah.
just to prove that he was worthy of it. Because it would kind of suck if it went down as like the Steve Nash kind of MVPs, right? Like I feel bad for Steve Nash because he won back-to-back MVPs, and yet everybody brings it up as like the worst 2 back-to-back MVPs ever, and you're like, that's just not fair. Like the
And
man, the man was literally voted the best player in the NBA, not by his own
yeah,
choice.
and you want to follow the Giannis trend, get 2 MVPs, get disrespected, go win a Finals MVP the next year, right? Like that's the way that he could do it, following those steps.
And then still always be disqualified from winning an MVP. Apparently, like this man can't catch a break. But dang,
Hey,
man,
you don't want what happens in 2K where like Luca takes over and wins like 12 and MVPs in a row and nobody else gets an opportunity to come in. All right, there's got to be some balance in the voting factors.
like I guess, man, like I should just go to the best player. Like I hate this narrative of like, oh, who had the best season, based on purely just statistics and team record. It's like, well, who's the guy who keeps his team chugging along, even if
But
he takes his foot off the gas a little bit?
but
That's
this
Giannis.
is this is
Giannis
the
is playing
issue.
at 80% right now throughout the season, and he is still far and away one of the best players in the NBA and carrying the squad. Like, if he played at 100% all year, his statistics would be that much better. But then he wouldn't win a championship, and then everyone would complain about that. So
Well, this is you can't win,
just put it.
right? Yeah, that's the thing.
No,
You can
can't
never
win.
you can never win. Everyone has a different opinion of what the best is, what they enjoy, right? The fact that him and Harden had beef for a while because Harden didn't believe Giannis had quote unquote skill, which is still an absolutely stupid argument, not the point. But like, yeah, we'll see what comes down. The MVP race is going to be fun because like we have had so many people actually in it this year, and I think it's centered down on a few couple of names, and you think about the Jokic Embiid game that happened last week, for example, right, where Embiid came in being like, this is an MVP game, right, and he showed up, and Jokic was like, I'm chilling, I'm doing my thing, like that's kind of the storyline of the different mentalities of the players too. So it's going to be an interesting race, for the rest of the season for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely, man. Like a lot of people believe that Jason Tatum, it's his award to lose, but like I would argue, Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis deserve it more than him. Probably Luka Doncic. Like I understand that Luka's only 11th place in the entire NBA and Boston's first, but come on,
You can't you can't forget to add
come
LeBron's name
on.
in there for what he's doing at 38 years old. If Kevin Durant didn't get injured, he probably would still be in this conversation. Like it's as much as it kind of is not a beautiful time for basketball because of, the reffing controversies and, a lot of weird stuff's happening. So many good players and it's still a beautiful time for basketball.
Bro, the refs have been bad for the last 30 plus years. Like, come on. Like, what are we talking about? 75 years? Like, I'll give him 30 at least.
Uh, all right. So last thing to bring up, besides the fact that obviously Dallas is in an ice storm right now, and they had to postpone the Pistons Wizards game because Detroit literally couldn't get out of Texas. They couldn't get out. Basically, there's so much ice, and they might actually
Yeah.
have to postpone the Pels game tonight, which Pels fans would be pretty happy about. They more time for Zion to get healthy, right? But the last thing to bring up is this Rising Stars game. They mentioned some names. Obviously, Bankero leading the cast of rookies and Scotty leading the cast of sophomores, with Scoot leading the cast of the G League players. Like, it's going to be an interesting time for some of these young guys come All-Star weekend.
Dude, it's going to be fun to see. Um, for a guy who's having a really down year in Scotty Barnes, like comparatively to his rookie season, I
Yeah,
guess he's still phenomenal, and like that's why I want all Raptors fans to just kind of like take a step back when it comes to Scotty Barnes, like let
chill.
the man breathe. Like
Yeah,
this guy's
yeah.
gonna be a superstar, trust me. But yeah, man, like I'm excited for All Star Weekend, but All Star Weekend is kind of the worst weekend in all of sports for every single league. Like
Yeah.
the NFL's All Star Game is this weekend. Does anybody really care? No. Literally, you know who one of the starting quarterbacks in the AFC is? Tyler Huntley. The man played
That's
in 6 games this year and was bad in his 6 games.
that's
Like,
a
do we have
human.
nobody that could start in this game or play in this game? It's because they like so many guys decline based on injury or based on whatever. They don't want to play. Patrick
Yeah.
Mahomes is going to the Super Bowl. He's not playing. Jalen Hurts going to the Super Bowl. He's not playing. But like, how bad is that? Like, I don't want to watch the NHL All Star Game. I don't want to watch the NBA All Star Game. Like that stuff's just boring to me.
And like we could talk about the controversies of the dunk contest and how that's been disappointing for years, but no, I think we'll just let it be. We'll move on. I think it's time for takes, my friend. Would you like to go or shall I lead?
No, man, you can go.
Well, okay, it's trade season, so I feel like I had to throw a trade out here. A player that has been kind of forgotten about, kind of doesn't do much anymore for Philadelphia. A player that I was a big fan of, who I don't want on the Raptors anymore, but I think can be very beneficial for certain teams, is Matisse Thybulle. And I think a team that could definitely use his defensive prowess and could definitely find a way to easily get a trade to him is the Sacramento Kings. And Matt knows that I want to see more beam season happening, so I think this would be a really good pickup for that Sacramento team.
Hey, man, I think it's a really good pickup. He's not necessarily a shooter, but they've got a ton of shooters.
Mm-hmm.
So he adds like a defensive guard presence, which with Fox is okay. But they do have Davion Mitchell, so yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they make the trade for him because I think Davion and him have pretty similar player profiles, and if the Raptors are teaching us anything, when you load up on one player profile, you kind of leave a lot to be desired. But I'm gonna go to the Lakers here, man. They're gonna go 3-0 this week, man. I believe in the Lakers. I believe in LeBron. I believe that he's gonna get to the Kareem record versus OKC again on Tuesday. They play. I believe it's tonight. Then they play Saturday, and then they play Tuesday in OKC. And I think he gets the record there, man. I think that it's gonna be his, not his crowning achievement, but which should be a huge deal in the NBA, which is not being treated like a huge deal. Everyone's just like, oh yeah, it's like fait accompli. Like even he's talking about the fact that like they were interviewing him. He's like, no, I'll get the record.
Yeah,
Like it's not weighing on me. Like I'm gonna get it. Like you guys, we got what 30 plus games left. I got like at least 2 or 3 more years playing in this NBA in the
right.
NBA. Like I'm gonna score 80 points. Like I'm averaging 30. Like let's
Okay,
just be real here.
so of LeBron's 20-year career at this point in time, in your mind as a true LeBron fan, what's your like iconic LeBron moment? Like, what's the one that stands out for you?
The block on Andre Iguodala. That's blocked by James,
Yeah,
man. Like
that's
that
right.
is
I'll
that's
give you
the
that one.
pinnacle, like
Okay,
of
then
LeBron James.
what's his most iconic shot, or like what's his thing that you would think of?
Oh, I don't know if it's a shot because he's not a like. It's the craziest thing that he's going to be the all-time NBA scoring leader without
Without being
being like
yeah
the like a true just scorer. Like I understand that like his passing and his all around game comes from the fact that he's a dominant scorer,
yeah
but he's never ever been considered that like true dominant scorer. And this man just gets it done. I would also think that like that bank shot is also etched in my mind.
oh
The
Toronto fans
the
yeah
Raptors over OG Anunoby, like
yeah
that is just etched in my brain as a LeBron GOAT play. But yeah, man, he's too good. He's the only guy in the top 5 of both. He's the only guy in the top 20 of both. Like
yeah
it's of assists and of points because he moved into fourth all time like against the Knicks and nobody cared.
Yeah, I mean,
Nobody said anything.
we are so blessed to have a player of his talent in the league, and it's crazy to think that sometime in the next week, and if not the next week, in the next 2 weeks, this man is going to break what many consider to be an unbreakable record.
Yeah,
Pretty exciting
absolutely.
times in the NBA for sure.
Yeah. You know what else is really exciting about the NBA? I was thinking about the top players in this league. The four top players in the NBA, to me, none of them are from the United States.
Yeah, true.
You got
Yeah,
Luka, you got Giannis, you got Jokic, and you got Embiid. Those are my top four. Like
yeah.
four guys that like I think are the best. I think Tatum is close to there. I think John Morant's close to there. I think Steph Curry's close to there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those four guys in their prime, dominating the NBA night in, night out. Like it's
And
lovely to see, man.
and that also goes to show why basketball is a growing presence globally. You know, to have these international stars, and you know, as the one international team, you know, as a fan of the one international team in the league, because we get to be international as Team Canada, I'm on board with this. You know, I think international stars wouldn't mind going to Canada, so I like this trend. Let's keep it up.
Yeah, yeah. They're from colder countries. They get it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Anything else, my friend?
No, man. I think you're good to wrap us up and get your dog.
I know Violet's just been going off this whole episode. There's somebody outside the front door. Who knows? Maybe I'm getting deliveries. Maybe Allison ordered something. But
Maybe.
thanks everybody for being here. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Board Sports. Like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and check out theboardsports.net for new episodes and blog posts.
And we'll talk to you next time.